In a world where war has evolved from the sound of gunfire to the silence of electromagnetic waves, where spies' satellites see in the dark and invisible planes cross the sky without leaving a shadow, a new episode of global tension has unfolded, and almost no one has noticed. Between March 18th and 20th, 2025, one of the most unpredictable and dangerous groups in the Middle East, the Houthis, made a mistake that may have redefined the course of modern warfare, directly provoking the greatest military superpower in history. And the response was silent, cold, and absolutely devastating. The B-2 Spirit, a stealth aircraft that looks more like it came out of a science fiction film than a military hangar, was activated without making a sound, without being detected, without giving a chance. In minutes, underground installations disappeared from the map. Satellites, radars, and digital sensors tracked what many called the phantom attack. But after all, who are the Houthis? Why did they challenge the U.S. so directly? And how did the B-2 manage to fly through the skies unseen, hitting surgical targets with almost supernatural precision? In this video, you will discover the behind-the-scenes story of this secret mission. You will understand how electronic warfare, real-time espionage, and stealth technology are changing the rules of the game. And above all, you will see why, in the 21st century, power no longer lies in the weapons you can see, but in those you can't see coming. To decipher the complex chain of events that culminated in the operation between March 18th and 20th, 2025, we need to go back in time and delve into the depths of one of the most brutal, prolonged, and, ironically, most ignored conflicts by the mainstream media: the civil war in Yemen, a country at the tip of the Arabian Peninsula, strategically and historically turbulent, which has become the stage for a bloody struggle for power and influence. It is in this cauldron of instability that the figure of the Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, the partisans of God, emerges. Originally a Zaidi religious renewal movement, a minority sect of Shiite Islam, they have evolved into a powerful armed militia with a fiery rhetoric against corruption and foreign influence, especially from the United States and Saudi Arabia. The Houthis seized large swathes of northern Yemen, including the capital, Sana'a, in 2014. This advance triggered a Saudi-led military intervention in 2015, turning the internal conflict into a regional proxy war. Behind the Houthis, accusations and evidence point to multifaceted support from Iran, financial, logistical, and, crucially, military, providing missiles, drones, and training. For years, this asymmetrical war dragged on, marked by aerial bombardments, missile strikes, and a devastating humanitarian crisis. But in 2024, Houthi audacity spilled over Yemen's borders. In a calculated escalation, they began targeting ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Initially, they claimed that the targets were only vessels linked to Israel, in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. But the target list quickly expanded to include commercial vessels under a variety of flags, turning one of the vital arteries of global trade, through which about 12% of the world's goods pass, into a relatively narrow field. Attacks by explosive-laden naval drones, anti-ship missiles, and even attempted hijackings became routine, driving up insurance costs and forcing shipping companies to divert their routes around southern Africa, adding weeks and millions of dollars to shipping costs. As chaos unfolded in the waters of the Red Sea, half a world away at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, a hub for the U.S. Air Force's Global Strike Command, quiet orders began to circulate. The Pentagon watched with growing concern. The Houthi attacks were not just disruptive, they were becoming dangerously sophisticated, demonstrating access to technologies and tactics that suggested increasingly robust outside support. U.S. intelligence indicated that missile and drone stockpiles were being improved and their precision capabilities were increasing. Diplomacy, as so often happens, proved fruitless, and when words fail and the threat persists, the United States turns to what its strategists call strategic denial, the ability to inflict significant damage, nearly invisible and with surgical precision. And the instrument chosen for this task has a name and a reputation that needs no introduction: the B-2 Spirit. The B-2 Spirit is not merely an aircraft, it is a demonstration of technological superiority, a sort of specter that haunts the nightmares of America's adversaries. Born in the final years of the Cold War, the fruit of a top-secret project that cost billions of dollars, the B-2 was conceived with one primary purpose: to penetrate the densest enemy air defenses undetected and deliver a devastating blow, either with precision conventional weaponry or, if necessary, with the apocalyptic power of nuclear weapons. Its iconic flying wing design, devoid of a traditional fuselage and tail, combined with composite materials that absorb radar waves and a sophisticated thermal signature management system, makes it virtually invisible to conventional detection systems. With an intercontinental range of more than 7,000 miles without refueling, and virtually unlimited with in-flight refueling, the B-2 can take off from American soil, reach any point on the globe, and return, all under a cloak of invisibility. Only 21 units were built, and each one is a strategic asset of incalculable value. In the freezing dawn of March 17, 2025, while the world slept, one of these metallic specters, possibly the Spirit of Missouri or the Spear of Kitty Hawk, took off silently from Whiteman AFB. Its mission, Operation Silent Retort, an unofficial name that circulated on intelligence forums. The route was a masterpiece of stealth planning. It crossed the North Atlantic, receiving fuel from KC 46 Pegasus tankers at predetermined points over the vast ocean, far from commercial routes. It entered European airspace with secret authorizations, flying through specific corridors to avoid any accidental detection. Over the Mediterranean, another discreet rendezvous for refueling, before continuing toward its theater of operations, the Red Sea, and finally, Yemen. Throughout, its electronic warfare systems and the very nature of its design ensured that it remained a blind spot for Russian radars in Syria, Iranian listening stations, and Chinese surveillance satellites. Its primary target, a network of underground weapons depots meticulously excavated in the Rocky Mountains of Sada province, the historic and symbolic heartland of the Houthi movement. Intelligence gathered by spy satellites, reconnaissance drones, and human sources indicated that these compounds housed medium-range ballistic missiles, long-range strike drones, and critical components supplied by Iran. To neutralize such deeply buried and protected targets, the B-2 carried a specialized and lethal payload: 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator MOP bombs, nicknamed bunker busters. Each of these behemoths weighs more than 13 tons and is GPS guided with pinpoint accuracy. They are designed to penetrate up to 60 meters of earth or 20 meters of reinforced concrete before detonating their explosive payload of more than 2,400 kilograms. At exactly 2:43 a.m. local time in Yemen on March 18th, under the darkness of the desert, the B-2 Spirit, flying at high altitude and completely undetected, released its deadly payload. The GBU-57s fell silently for several seconds before hitting the ground with unimaginable force, penetrating the bowels of the earth. The explosions that followed were cataclysmic, but to those on the surface, they would initially have seemed like earthquakes. Thermal images captured by satellites and surveillance drones operating at a safe distance recorded waves of heat emanating from underground, followed by colossal clouds of dust and debris ejected from the tunnel entrances. Secondary explosions in a chain confirmed the destruction of the ammunition magazines. 3 strategic depots, vital to Houthi ability to threaten shipping and their neighbors, were obliterated, reduced to craters, and twisted metal beneath tons of pulverized rock. The message, unmistakable and brutal, had been sent. The United States had demonstrated that its patience had a limit, and that its ability to project power was unmatched. But in a miscalculation that would seal their immediate fate, the Houthis didn't get it, or perhaps they chose to ignore it. The dust had not yet settled on the smoldering ruins of the warehouses in Sada when, on the same evening of March 18th, the Houthi leadership, probably driven by a mixture of fury, wounded pride, and a dangerous incomprehension of the scale of what had just happened, ordered retaliation. In an act of near-suicidal defiance, they launched a salvo of anti-ship missiles. The target, the USS Stout DDG-55, a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer patrolling international waters in the southern Red Sea as part of the naval coalition to protect freedom of navigation. It was a clear attempt to demonstrate strength, to prove that they would not be intimidated, even after such a devastating blow. Missiles, possibly variant of the Iranian Nor or Gator, were fired from mobile platforms hidden along the Yemeni coast. In Houthi command centers, the expectation was that they would at least cause significant damage to the American ship or perhaps force it to retreat. But the USS Stout was no ordinary target. Like all modern U.S. Navy warships, it is a floating fortress of defensive technology. Its SPY-1D radars, part of the Aegis combat system, detected the incoming missiles moments after launch, tracking their trajectories with precision. But the first line of defense it deployed was not an interceptor missile. It was something much more subtle and ingenious: the NOCA system. The NOCA is an Australian-American electronic countermeasure technology, a glide rocket that, upon launch, emits a radio frequency signal designed to simulate a naval target much more attractive and prominent than the ship itself. In essence, it creates digital decoys, electronic ghosts in the air. The Houthi missile guidance systems, programmed to seek the radar signature of a large warship, were fooled. They took the bait, diverting from their original course toward the USS Stout and chasing the false signals emitted by the NOCA. Minutes later, the enemy missiles exploded harmlessly over the waters of the Red Sea, a safe distance from the American destroyer. The Houthi attack, intended as a show of force and an act of intimidation, ended in a resounding tactical humiliation. Their most capable missiles were neutralized without the Americans having to fire a single shot from their hard-kill weapon systems, such as the Phalanx CIWS or Standard missiles. And then silence came. The United States, instead of an immediate and overt retaliation for the failed attack, adopted an even more calculated strategy, a tactic of psychological warfare. No fiery official statement, no public threats, just a tense, oppressive silence. A silence that allowed the enemy to brood over its failure, to question its capabilities, and, above all, to be left to its own paranoia, wondering what the next American move would be, and where it would come from. This deliberate pause was not a sign of hesitation, but rather the calm before a new storm, the meticulous preparation for the next blow, which would target not only the weapons but the eyes and ears of the adversary. As the Houthis reeled from the failure of their attack on the USS Stout and the destruction of its depots, a crucial piece of their war game remained hidden in the turbulent waters of the Gulf of Aden, operating in the shadows. Its name, the MV Zagros. Officially, it was a converted cargo ship registered under a flag of convenience and disguised as an oceanographic research or logistics support vessel. In reality, the Zagros was a mobile electronic intelligence element and signals intelligence SIGINT platform serving Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Its mission was multifaceted and vital to Houthi operations. Equipped with sophisticated antennas, eavesdropping systems, and powerful spectrum analysis equipment, the Zagros discreetly patrolled the sea lanes, collecting data on coalition ship movements, intercepting communications, and crucially, tracking commercial vessels to provide accurate targeting information to Houthi missile and drone operators on the ground. It was, in essence, the forward eyes and ears of Iran and its Yemeni allies in the region, a force multiplier that significantly increased the lethality and precision of rebel strikes. For months, it had operated with a stealth that bordered on invisibility to the general public, but not to the watchful censors of American intelligence. On March 19th, the decision was made. The Zagros had become too critical a link in the Houthi attack chain to be ignored, but its elimination required a delicate balance, neutralizing the threat without provoking a direct and public escalation with Iran. The order went out, and execution was entrusted to naval aviation. From a flight deck of the aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman, CVN-75, operating somewhere in the Arabian Sea, F divided by a -18E divided by F Super Hornet fighters were catapulted into the sky. Unlike the B-2 mission, this one did not require the same level of intercontinental stealth, but rather speed, precision, and the ability to operate in a contested maritime environment. The mission was conducted with the utmost discretion, likely under cover darkness or in the early hours of the morning, to minimize the possibility of observation by civilian ships or aircraft. At 5:27 local time, the Super Hornets, guided by accurate intelligence about the location of the Zagros, reached their target. They did not use large bombs, which might suggest an intent to annihilate the entire crew or cause an environmental disaster. The weapon of choice was the AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapon, JSOW, missile, a precision-guided munition capable of being launched from a safe distance and striking fixed targets would control collateral damage. Several AGM-154 missiles hit the Zagros in vital locations. The bridge, the engine room, and crucially, the compartments housing its sophisticated spy equipment. The explosions were precise, incapacitating the ship and starting fires on board. It was not an immediate, spectacular sinking, but rather a surgical strike that left it adrift and ablaze. Hours later, Saudi-affiliated media outlets and other regional observers began cautiously reporting that an unidentified vessel, suspected of illicit activity and possibly flying an Iranian flag, had suffered a serious incident and was sinking near the strategic Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the gateway to the Red Sea. Iran, predictably, denied any involvement or the loss of one of its vessels, maintaining its policy of plausible deniability. The United States, for its part, maintained absolute official silence on the incident. No claim of responsibility, no statement. But the message delivered through the universal language of military force was crystal clear to Tehran and its allies. The electronic eyes guiding Houthi attacks in the Red Sea had been permanently blinded. The group's ability to threaten international shipping had just been dealt a devastating blow, and Iran had been reminded that its clandestine activities were not going unnoticed. With their strategic depots in ruins and their main intelligence vessel neutralized, the Houthis' ability to sustain large-scale offensive operations was severely compromised. However, on the night of March 19th, in an act that was both desperation and a last-ditch attempt to demonstrate relevance, they resorted to one of their most feared weapons, ballistic missiles. This time, the declared target was not a ship in the Red Sea, but a land target of high symbolic and strategic value, Israel. The launch of long-range ballistic missiles toward Israeli territory was one of the most serious threats the Houthis could muster, a demonstration of their alliance with the so-called Axis of the Resistance led by Iran. It was arguably the last gasp of an offensive campaign that was being systematically dismantled. Missiles, probably of the Quds or Tufan type, with sufficient range to reach southern Israel from Yemen, were fired. But between Yemen and Israel, in the middle of the Red Sea, another silent guardian of the U.S. Navy stood watch, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Carney, DDG-64. Like the USS Stout, Carney is equipped with the powerful Aegis combat system. But crucially, Carney was configured for a specific mission, ballistic missile defense, BMD. Its arsenal included the standard missile 3 SM-3 interceptor missile. The SM-3 is no ordinary missile. It is designed to intercept short and medium-range ballistic missiles during the mid-flight phase, while the incoming missile is still in space, outside the Earth's atmosphere, before it begins its descent toward its target. And its method of destruction is unique. It does not explode near the target like most anti-aircraft missiles. The SM-3 is a hit-to-kill weapon. It uses a kinetic kill vehicle, KKV, that separates from the missile body in space and, using its own infrared sensors and maneuvering thrusters, collides directly with the enemy ballistic missile. The kinetic energy released by the impact at combined speeds that can exceed 15,000 kilometers per hour, more than 4 kilometers per second, is enough to pulverize the target, turning it into a cloud of harmless debris that disperses into the void. The moment the Houthi ballistic missiles were detected ascending on their trajectories, the USS Carney systems went into action. The powerful spy 1D radars tracked the targets, calculated their trajectories, and provided engagement data. Within minutes, the SM-3s were fired from the ship's Mk-41 vertical launch system. They rose majestically into the night sky, their rocket engines propelling them out of the atmosphere. In the vacuum of space, the KKVs separated and began their final chase. The result was a series of flawless interceptions. The Houthi ballistic missiles were obliterated in midair, long before they could pose any real threat, and before Israel's air defense systems, such as Iron Dome or Arrow, needed to be activated or even detected them as imminent threats within their effective ranges. For military analysts and strategists, this event was more than just a successful interception. It was unequivocal confirmation that American aerospace control in that theater of operations was, for all practical purposes, absolute. The ability to deny an adversary the use of airspace and near-air space to launch strikes was a demonstration of technological and operational power of the first magnitude. The Houthis had played their biggest card, and it had been nullified with cold, calculated efficiency in the silence of outer space. The morning of March 20th, 2025, dawned over Yemen and the Red Sea. After 3 days of intense and precise operations by American forces, the Houthis' offensive capabilities had been severely degraded. Their strategic weapons depots were now smoking craters. Their main naval intelligence platform lay at the bottom of the Gulf of Aden. Their most dangerous ballistic missiles had been turned into space dust. Yet, in a last spasm of resistance, or perhaps out of sheer inertia by units on the ground who had not yet fully grasped the situation, a few Houthi drones were launched. They were likely KSEF or Samad suicide drones, smaller in size and range, perhaps targeting remaining merchant ships or Saudi coalition positions. This time, the response came from the USS Jason Dunham, DDG-109, another Arleigh Burke-class destroyer station in the region. In an almost routine display of efficiency, its air defense systems, including the Phalanx CIWS cannon, a radar-controlled, high-fire rotary machine gun nicknamed R2D2 for its appearance, and short-range missiles dealt with the threat. All approaching Houthi drones were detected, tracked, and shot down in less than 5 minutes. A precise and lethal barrage of fire gave the flying objects no chance. Shortly afterward, the United States Central Command, CENTCOM, responsible for American military operations in the Middle East, issued a short, almost laconic statement that summed up the situation with a dose of military irony. A spokesman said that American and Allied forces would continue to monitor the situation, but that after the recent actions, they were running out of high-value Houthi targets to engage. The operation, which was never formally declared a campaign or war, ended there. No victory parades, no triumphant speeches from the White House. Just the cold, hard evidence of a job well done. The toll, however, was brutal for the Houthis. Command and control bases disrupted, stockpiles of advanced weapons eliminated, critical intelligence and launch infrastructure dismantled. It was without a doubt the largest and fastest succession of military defeats inflicted on the group since the start of the Yemeni civil war, a clear demonstration of what happens when certain red lines are crossed with superpower. However, an important detail, a worrying footnote, hangs over this apparent victory. Defense analysts and regional security experts point out an inconvenient fact. As long as the naval blockade and American and Allied military pressure remain firm in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, the flow of weapons and support from Iran to the Houthis can be contained, but it is unlikely to be completely eliminated. If this pressure is lifted or relaxed, there is a high probability that Houthi arsenals will gradually be replenished. Ultimately, war rarely ends definitively with few actions, however spectacular. It simply changes shape, goes dormant, and waits for a new opportunity. The ideological infrastructure and regional support network for the Houthis remain. In the increasingly contested skies of the Middle East, an old ghost, a silhouette that many thought was relegated to strategic deterrence missions against great powers, has returned to haunt the enemies of the established international order. The B-2 Spirit, the ultimate symbol of stealth aviation and American power projection capabilities, has reappeared like a nocturnal specter, and with the same enigmatic ease with which it appeared, it has disappeared, swallowed up by the vastness of global airspace. It left behind not only craters and calculated destruction, but powerful and unequivocal message, engraved in fire and steel. There are forces in this world that, when they decide to act with the fullness of their capabilities, do not ask permission, do not negotiate preliminaries. They simply move their pieces on the global chessboard and, if necessary, erase the enemy from the tactical map, often before he even realizes that the game has truly begun. The story of the Houthi defiance of the B-2 Spirit and the American war machine is a grim reminder that in the age of technology, audacity has its limits, and ignorance of the capabilities of others can have catastrophic consequences. It was a lesson in the asymmetry of modern military power. If you want to learn more stories like this, about secret missions that change the course of conflicts, about invisible planes that operate in the shadows, and about the silent wars that take place far above our heads and far below our everyday awareness, then you've come to the right place. Subscribe to the Combat Zone Aviation channel. Activate the bell so you don't miss any updates. And share this video with someone who needs to understand that power, in modern geopolitics, often manifests itself not with a bang, but with deafening silence. Until the next mission.